This is Eva Clark of Healing Multiple Sclerosis. And I wanted to do this presentation because this comes up a lot. There's a lot of my clients too, there's a guilt feeling, right? Feeling guilty for having MS. Did I cause this? Guilt for the things that you can't do. I should be able to help. If I can't work, I should at least have the house all maintained. And when my husband comes home, everything should be all set. I should at least be able to make dinner. I can't even do that. And there's a lot of guilt, apart from everything else you're having to deal with. That's also a big component. And so I wanted to start with, what is it? Because I think when we start getting an awareness of what exactly is guilt, we'll start understanding what's going on. Does anyone want to give it a try? You can just unmute yourself.
Shame.
Shame. Guilt is very similar to shame. Yep. Definitely has that feeling.
Feeling wrong.
Yeah, there's a feeling wrong. Good one.
Feeling bad for something that you could have caused.
Yep. Feeling bad for something you could have caused.
This is bringing up a lot for me because I always feel like I'm the source of anger for my husband.
And that makes you feel, yeah, there's guilt there, no?
Right, because he has to take care of me. He has taken on being my husband and a caregiver, and that's hard.
Yep. Yep. So guilt actually reflects how much something means to you. Guilt is actually not a bad thing. It feels terrible, but it actually is an indication that that thing you're guilty about, you're feeling guilty about, is something that is very important to you. You don't feel guilty about, if someone doesn't really care about littering and they litter, and they don't feel guilty about it. But if it really means something to them, they'll feel like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Right? So if you think about the things that you feel guilty about or feel shame, ask yourself, what about this has value for me? What is my meaning? For example, what you just said about your husband, it's very important for you to not make people angry, to make them happy. And so the fact that what is happening, which is outside of your control, is making him angry, really hurts you because it means so much to you to not be doing that. And so you can think about, when you're feeling guilty about having MS, what are those values that aren't being met because of that, right? Can we name a few?
I think because I can't do a lot of things myself, I guess there's a guilt for not being more independent.
Yep. So independent would be a value.
People, like teams, wanting to be able to contribute, wanting to be involved, and not feeling like I'm able to contribute equally.
Yeah, which is just saying how important it is for you. It has meaning for you to be a contribution. So, and the worse you feel is actually just how important it is for you to be of contribution.
I think energy level is highly affected by MS, and it's easy to feel guilty when you don't have the energy to do the things your friends or family want you to participate in.
Because what is the value there?
That you want everybody to love you. You want to do everything And you want to do everything they want you
To be loved. And the way is doing things they want. Do
to. Yeah.
things other wants. That's one way they want. Contribution, participation, doing what others want. So here are a couple of examples too. I just wrote a few. Helping others, right? If you can't help others and or they have to help you, you're like, I'm the helper. That's what, that's part of my personality.
Mm-hmm.
Being independent, right? It's like, oh, I should be able to cook for myself and I can't. I should be able to. Having value for others, what you just said, Amy, it's, also being there for others and even doing a good job, right? I could say all of my clients with MS, before getting the MS, they were the 110 percenters.
Mm-hmm.
Any job they did, it had to be 110%. And all of a sudden, MS doesn't let them do that. And so this feeling, I want to do well, I want to get the job done really well, it's important to them, and they feel guilty when they have to just turn it in just enough, right? Because that's not who they've been, and it's really frustrating. And they turn it in, they feel guilty, like, oh my God, I would never, ever have turned this in like this if I had a say in this,
Yes.
right? And yet, there's a value being met by following what the MS is requiring you to do. It's not as evident, it's not as seen. And we can apply this to MS and we can apply it to anything that you feel guilty about. I'll have, for example, when someone asks you, like Amy just said, someone asks you to do something and you say no, right? You can feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel guilty because you want to do things for them that makes them happy. Yet you might be saying no because tomorrow you have a project you have to turn in. And so if you don't get to sleep on time, you'll never make that project. So you can feel guilty for saying no because how important that is. Yet the value you are following would be what? If you're going to bed on time, what would be that value?
Help.
Taking care of yourself. Yes.
Health, taking care of yourself. So unfortunately or fortunately, with MS, it actually requires you to follow values that you didn't have prioritized, did you? Most people, at least I know, that have MS tend to be the sacrifice. They're like, oh, I don't need to sleep. I'll just sleep 5 hours. Oh, I can do 110%. You go home and rest with your family. I'll stay here until 9 p.m. I'll get this project done. And so all of a sudden with MS, other values are coming up on the surface, right?
Mm.
I don't know if anyone else will find this as funny as I did, but when you asked that question, I thought like reality, that's the value.
Exactly.
It's not even health at that point. It's just like what is truthfully possible for me to do.
Exactly. I actually wrote that here, logic and rationalization, right? Logic. Well, my legs don't work. I can't do the marathon, honey. So there's reality, there's self-care,
Mm-hmm.
and reality of longevity. Well, if I push myself, that's it for the week, right? So all of a sudden you have to weigh things in a way you didn't do before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's other values coming up that maybe we'll say weren't your values, but it's your body's values, right? Doing one thing at a time or just a little at a time because of the fatigue, or really pacing yourself, right? Or really prioritizing, right? Because it's like, okay, I've only got so much, energy. I think Bridget said it once. It's like, if I do my laundry and everything, that's it for the day. So I have to decide, either I delegate it or that's what I'm going to do today, right? So MS is really forcing you to see other values that were not on the table. Because before it was like, well, I'll do the laundry while I'm doing my project, while I make that phone call. And then after I get all that done, I'm going to, organize my closets. And nowadays, that's multitasking is not an MS value as much as you would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I propose when it comes to guilt. And I'll use the non-MS example first because it tends to be easier to see. It's hard for us to see our own stuff. But when I talked about feeling guilty for saying no to somebody because tomorrow you have to turn in a project, how can you meet both values sustainably? Which is, I want to be there for that person and I want to turn in my project. How can we do both? So, for example, in the case I gave, is like maybe you say, no, but how about tomorrow when I turn in my project, we'll go celebrate and watch that movie you want to see, right? That would be a way to say, I'm doing my professional work and I'm making this person happy, which is something which is of value for me. So think about this. How can I, and these are a lot of the values that were there before MS came in and trumped everything, helping others, being super independent, trying to show value and being there for others. Physical exercise sometimes, right? It's like using yourself physically to just ram through whatever, while also practicing self-care, practicing longevity, right? If you do 110% every day, you might not live to be 80, right? Practicing, as Debbie said, logic, practicing what's realistic, and then pacing. So, Amy, wanting to make others happy, how can you help make others happy while practicing self-care?
$64,000 question. Perhaps I can instead of taking it on myself that I need to protect them, maybe I have in the past pissed people off because I have anticipated that I was going to upset them by not doing something or putting some limits on it. And they're like, well, how much of a jerk do you think I am that I wouldn't understand that? You're nodding your head at, but yes. So how can I help others? Well, also using logic and rationalization is perhaps I can help others while also letting them decide what they really need or want instead of me doing it.
Okay, that's a great one. What other ways can you, for example, show value or be worthy for others while practicing self-care and longevity? So, as our neurophysical therapist said, while working at 80%, what would that look like? I'll throw some out because I had a little time before, but then I would love for you guys to go, ooh, that just gave me another idea. How about rather than doing all the work yourself, Amy just said that, for example, showing your value to another person can actually be listening and seeing them. Because sometimes we're so busy trying to get the certifications, trying to prove that we have value, that actually by stopping that pursuit and actually being present and listening to another person or acknowledging what they've achieved is so valuable. Having a friend that sees you is probably 10 times more valuable than having a friend that's awesome and professional and has a beautiful husband and has a beautiful car and it's like, oh, that's a whole different way of showing value, which is not centered on what do I look like, but centered on the person I want to make happy. I think Mary talked about her husband painting, the room and just sitting in the same room with him, and just talking and just being there and just commenting and, hey, that looks nice. Or maybe saying, hey, it's been 2 hours. Why don't you take a break? That could be another way of, helping another person rather than being the one who's painting, is actually being the one that's saying, hey, I know what it's like to be fatigued. Let's not get you in that same place. It's been 2 hours. Why don't we take a 15-minute break? Why don't we just have a coffee and then we'll keep going? That's helping others as well.
I like that one, Eva. Thank you.
Yes. Physical exercise, right? How can I be physical while also being realistic?
Mhm.
Shakti,
Yes.
your accessible yoga.
Hmm.
How is that actually being physical while being realistic?
Well, that is realistic because you're doing your practice based on your body at the present moment.
Yeah.
And just looking at it objectively and not judgmentally.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's leg, what are you doing today? You
Yeah.
doing that? Okay, you're doing that without any like strings attached. Just what trying to kind of get it down to black and white. It's moving or it's not moving, but no other judgmental aspects to it.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Right.
I have this little test I do, my personality test of MS. The majority of people that have MS will say that until they had MS, they were pretty much neck up. It's like what was happening down there. They ignored it. They weren't familiar with it. But hey, they'll do a marathon. But body wise, it's just a tool to move and move quickly. And all of a sudden with MS, it's like physical exercise becomes about physical awareness, as Shakti said, about hello, leg, right? Now you tell me how that's not beautiful, right? To actually really be in physical presence, physical mindfulness.
It's kind of funny how we notice it more when we can't feel it than when we can.
Yeah. It forces you an awareness, like, oh, hey, wait a minute. It's like, yeah, it's like, what is that? We really feel things more when we lose them, like relationships, right? I didn't realize how important you were until I couldn't feel you anymore. Aha, MS is saying, hey, you're a little bit further down than the neck.
Right, you don't miss it till it's gone.
Yeah. How about this one? This one's I'm pushing you guys a little bit here, but how can I be perfect while also being realistic? Longevity, self-care, pacing.
That's an oxymoron because being perfect in itself is unrealistic.
It is. So what can the priority be? If the goal used to be perfect and you would just do everything to drive yourself and work 60 hours to get that, that beautiful house or whatever, what would be a goal that balances both?
Change your definition of perfection.
Right.
Change the definition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I think in Buddhism, we would say you are perfect exactly as you are.
Right.
So you don't get rid of the word perfect, you get rid of your definition of the word perfect.
Or that wherever you are in the present moment is the scale of perfect. Is the
Or think about this. How would you apply that, for example, to a project? You want to turn in a project this is how you've been until now, and MS no longer lets you multitask, stay focused on a project for 14 hours, How do you do your project if you can't do it perfectly as the goal, as the value, your top priority? Now all of a sudden you have to add these other values to it.
Can you ask for help?
Yes, you can do, instead of perfection, the value can be, or the goal can be collaboration or delegation, right? To be a perfect delegator would be very nice too, asking for help.
I don't know if this like works with other people's frameworks, but I work a lot in justice movements, and perfectionism is such a value that's rooted in white supremacy. So sometimes bringing in like awareness of, there's a lot of particularly women of color who've been trying to dismantle that perfectionist idea in justice movements and nonprofits for a long time. So bringing in um, these ways of thinking that have often been suppressed, it can be a really powerful way of, because it's not just dismantling perfectionism. There's a lot that goes into that of like
Mhm.
who's acceptable, and I mean, this is kind
Yeah.
of intersectional with disability justice, of course, too.
Yeah, it's like
Directly.
only one, instead of only one way, it's like there's only
Mhm.
one way to do this project. There's only one way that's acceptable. It's like, okay, well, what about what's acceptable within my current abilities, within what MS
Right.
is trying to get me to fit into? Maybe it's more about priority. Maybe it's more about, is it efficient? Maybe it's more about, is it reduced to its simplest form? Instead of wow factor, it's the, oh, got it factor, something that's really easy to understand. Maybe instead of perfection, it's about knowing something well. It's going back to it over and over and really get to know it deeply rather than perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I love the comment from before that C's get degrees from being in graduate school. And, I forgot who it was, but it was one of the ladies in our group had said that, about stressing and stressing and stressing in grad school, and then coming to the belief that, oh yeah, like C's are the same as A's when it really comes down to it.
Yeah. So I always love getting a little quotes. So I kind of wanted to just bring this one, that sometimes you fall down because there's something down there that you're supposed to find. So sometimes, the MS symptoms might, feel like the enemy, but they might be kind of steering you towards other ways of being that are maybe kinder to the body and to longevity. And so, just the practice of learning to listen, learning to just be rather than be the doer, can be what MS is all about. And so perhaps MS is there for you to find more sustainable ways to express your deepest values. So happy holidays. And you can use this exercise for anything that you have, that you feel guilty about, and just kind of check in. Okay, what value am I not being able to achieve with this? What value am I achieving with this? And let me step back and see what other ways can I achieve that value. There isn't one way, as Debbie said. There isn't this one perfect way. What other ways, cultural ways, what other ways are available?
One question it's hard for me to answer is like, what am I grateful for with my MS? And that's always like, fucking nothing. Like that. I'm pretty stubborn about that one. Sometimes I can just be like, no, and I'll never see, like when people say like, oh, well, it actually was a gift. And I'm just like rolling my eyes. But there's so many things that you said that I've heard today that help me sort that out and answer that question.